Absolutely. So bring us to a moment where we're in Vermont, in the woods, I believe, working on
Hmm.
conflict resolution with Sunnis and Shiites from Iraq. And there
Yeah.
you are, like, what's that? What's that about? What's that like?
Yeah. So I gotta go, I'll go back a bit and explain why they're even there. But so
Yeah.
I work in Brattleboro, Vermont, and for an organization called High Five Adventure Learning Center. And we have the benefit of also having in Brattleboro a place called the School for International Training that
Mm,
brings in students from all over the world. And then the intent is to integrate them with some American students, learn a bit of have a bit of a cultural exchange, and then design programming that they'll bring back to their countries to help whatever situation they're going through in their country. It's the intent to try to
mm,
serve them. What we do is our organization is every time those students would come to Vermont, they would send them to us for a couple of days where we would focus on connection. And so I work for an organization where our motto is connect, empower, lead.
mm,
And so the entire purpose is using adventure or experiential education to connect people and teach them and learn about themselves and others and how they interact. This particular group was for Sunni and Shiite 18-year-olds, so high school seniors, who were coming to Vermont as part of a program to bring back some conflict resolution programming and back to their nation in Iraq. For those who don't know, Sunni Shiite populations, then they do not get on. So it was quite a dramatic experience for them coming here, seeing them get off the bus, arrive in Vermont, and the intent for us was to try to connect them to groups of students. And initially, when they got off the bus, it was like a Western culture high school dance where you've got like the girls and the guys on either side of the gym, like they don't want to touch,
mm,
or maybe it's middle school, maybe the younger where that's the cooties vibes. But it was kind of that experience where they were very separated, Sunni Shia. Um, Now, the thing for us is the plan, and we have a beautiful property here in Vermont, and we have a ropes course. Part of our adventure learning is that we create experiences that stretch students. So we create large
mhm,
experiences that kind of push them outside of what's deemed as the comfort zone and kind of encourage kind of that growth. It's kind of a little bit of a nudge towards growth. So the intent was I was going to get the students from the field to the woods. I was going to get them in harnesses, helmets. I was going to belay. I was going to get all this stuff set up. And the part for me was because as someone originally from England but now living in the US, being white, I the term adventure for me is almost recreational, right? Like our lives are comfortable enough whereby we seek risk to stretch ourselves. the
mhm.
the thing that I didn't have I was probably 27 at the time, the naivety a little bit was like I didn't really understand that coming to Vermont was a stretch for them. Like I didn't need to
Mhm.
get them in a harness. I didn't need to get them in a helmet and to height to stretch
Yeah.
them. And so I had my intention in my mind. The reason I wanted to bring up this story is partly because of the change in mindset I had from an educational perspective around what my expectations should be around working with students. So the expectations that I had, the expectations of the staff that came through this program was that they were going to get to hike and climb and have these incredible experiences. There was going to be some great videos and marketing and all the other things they might want to use this for. But what I was noticing from the students really quickly is that they could care less about that stuff. They
Mhm,
really cared about the fact that the trees were green and this was fields and there were hills and the fauna and flora was way different than they had experienced. And
mm,
we are their first stop in America, right? They're coming to us before they go to other places. So it's an overwhelming experience anyway. And so a student came up to me and said, Phil, what is that? And it was a pine cone. So there was a little
mm,
pine cone on the ground. And I have a background in outdoor education. So when I first came to the US, I taught outdoor ed, which was like forest ecology and all of those kind of things in upstate New York. And so I drew on that and was like, I'll teach you about where a pine cone is and what a pine tree is and what the difference between deciduous is and coniferous is. And like I got into
mhm,
like the weeds a little bit, like nerdy-esque in that. But as I started opening that door to those questions, more and more people had more questions and it was starting to suck into the time. And typically I would have in that moment shut down that conversation and gone into the adventurous stuff because I had a curriculum in mind. Like I knew where I was going, but I decided to default into rely on the students to lead me rather than me lead them. And it was a good
mm,
reframe for me. The whole day, we never left the ground. We never did any of the things I intended to do. We spent an entire day talking and wandering in the woods and asking tons of questions about moss and lichen and all the different things, and seeing a squirrel. And it's like things that we take for granted as like obvious normal
Mhm.
things. I'm seeing through the eyes of them. Then it began to rain, and in my head, I was like, oh, nah, it's going to rain. It
Yeah.
sucks. Like, this is ruining stuff. Put on my jacket. And they were laughing and clapping, and like, it was the best moment ever. So the reason I bring up this story, and I think it aligns with like, ruckus makers and like changing education and looking at it differently, is for me, it was a big, impactful moment to say I should follow the students and I shouldn't follow my own agenda because of all of the other reasons I
Yeah.
think I should follow stuff. And so I wrote a blog, and I called it Find the Pine Cones. So like the message I often lead to new educators is find the pine cones. And that doesn't have to be the specific of that cone, but like I remember that moment being more impactful than anything I could have crafted myself. And I just led with the students, and it gets brought up a lot by the school, and it gets brought up in different moments. Like, oh, you remember when you didn't do anything you said you were going to do? It's sort of like a joke in house, but like it's become a philosophy that I lead with, is trying to ignore my curriculums and agendas and try to lean more towards what the students are bringing to me in the moment. And that, I think, in a nutshell anyway, or a pine cone maybe, is the purpose of experiential education, which is what I do, is like create experiences to maximize learning, and it's more about what's happening in the moment than anything I could really craft. And that's where the magic comes from anyway. And no doubt listeners have all experienced those moments where like a student asks them something and it derails you completely, and it leads to something cooler afterwards. And then you're like, oh, okay, that was a really cool thing that the kids taught me versus me teaching them.